Welcome to Season 5, Episode 6 of Angela Watson's Truth for Teachers. I'm your host, Angela Watson, and I'm here to speak life, encouragement, and truth into the minds and hearts of educators and get you energized for the week ahead. Today, I'm going to be talking about how to hold on to hope when your school morale is faltering. Visit truthforteachers.com to get the written highlights and to share your thoughts on the show. This podcast episode is sponsored by theteachertoolkit.com, a free website with over 60 teaching tools designed to help make instruction engaging and meaningful. For each strategy, you'll find step-by-step instructions, editable templates, and even video footage from real classrooms to show you the strategy in action. To check out these free tools and the growing collection of affordable online courses, visit theteachertoolkit.com. So if you missed episode 3 of this season's podcast, you may not yet know about this new format that I'm trying out every couple of episodes, which is a coaching call. So this is something like instructional coaching and life coaching all sort of blended together, where I'm answering teachers specific questions about productivity and balance and mindset. Today, I'm going to let you listen in on a coaching call that I did with a third grade teacher named Danielle. Like all the teachers that I'm conducting these free coaching calls with, Danielle has completed a year in the 40-Hour Teacher Workweek Club, and she has a really good understanding already about how to be intentional in her teaching and how to maintain a positive, productive mindset. However, as we progressed through the conversation, it became clear that she is dealing with a whole lot of things that are completely out of her control. And these are things that are increasing her workload and increasing her stress level exponentially. About halfway through the call, I think we got to the real heart of the issue, which is that morale at the school is really faltering right now. And it's really hard for Danielle and the other teachers to hold on to hope every day and to keep doing the work when the school climate is just filled with this constant low-grade anxiety. And things are just feeling very unstable right now. So Danielle has given me permission to record our conversation and share it here with you on the podcast. So if these are issues that you're facing in your school too, hopefully our thoughts will give you some encouragement and some motivation to keep going. So here's Danielle asking her first question.
So sometimes I get caught up on how unfair it all is. The inequity between the schools, the implementation of processes like RTI, people not pulling their fair share of the load, and other things. So how can I get out of the negativity trap?
Yeah, that's such a common problem, isn't it? And I think really the first thing is to be intentional about trying to focus on the positive. And I mean, it can sound sort of hokey, but practicing gratitude every single day really does make a difference because you're drawing your own attention to the things that are going right so that they don't get buried under everything that's wrong, because there's a whole lot that's going wrong. So you really have to train yourself to see the good. And it doesn't really come naturally to a lot of people. It doesn't come naturally to me. It's something I've had to train myself to do. And maybe it doesn't come natural to you either. But what you give your attention to is what you get more of. So you know how, like, if you get a new car or you're thinking about getting a new car, you suddenly see that everyone else on the highway is driving that car too? Mm-hmm. That's because you've trained yourself to look for that car, right? You're alert and you're watching for it. So you see more of them. Those cars were there all the time. It's not that there's, the sudden influx of other people who bought the same car that you're thinking about. It's just that your attention wasn't trained to notice. So you have to train yourself to focus on what's right instead of what's wrong. So that's sort of the first thing. And then I think the second piece is to practice focusing on the things that you can control. So look for the ways that you do have authority and you do have influence and exercise the authority there. Often we create this story for ourselves where, we're sort of powerless. We can't do anything about the really big problems in education. We can't do anything about the things that are preventing us from exercising authority over the smaller issues that we can do something about, right? So there are things that we can do something about, but because we're so caught up on the things that we can't control, we sort of give up more of our power. So being intentional about focusing on the positive and practice focusing on what you can control makes a big difference. The third piece there is to practice evaluating your thoughts on the basis of whether they are helpful to you. and then letting them go if they're not. So you can allow a thought to come into your mind, and if it's not true or it's not helpful, you can just let it pass right on out. So you don't have to judge the thought. You don't have to judge yourself for having the thought. You aren't your thoughts. It's just a thought. It doesn't have any power unless you attach power and importance to it. So when that negativity starts coming in, you can choose not to hold on to those negative thoughts and just let them go, turn your attention and turn your mental energy to something else. And sometimes that's fairly easy, and other times it's really hard, particularly when the negativity is totally valid. Sometimes the negativity is really warranted. There's just really awful things that are happening or really unjust things. And you wonder, how am I supposed to just let these things go? And you do that by telling yourself, okay, this thought may be true. It may be true that this is not a good thing. This is a really bad thing, but it's not helpful to me to be thinking about it. It's not serving me well. It's weighing me down, and it's making it harder for me to produce positive action. So I have to let it go. So you can limit the amount of time that you allow yourself to stay stuck on those negative thoughts. Give yourself time to wallow, give yourself time to think about how unfair it is, and then intentionally replace those thoughts with something positive and something action-oriented.
Okay. I was in an RTI meeting where I got very overwhelmed, and it felt like, well, it was reality that a lot of different people had kind of not fulfilled their responsibilities, and it was really hard to be in that moment. And I really kind of let some things slide, and I was blameful, and it definitely made things hard on me professionally to go back and deal with that. So I'm thinking, if I'm in the moment and am kind of overwhelmed by something, and I wasn't prepared for this, I didn't think it was going to go this poorly. Mm-hmm. Do you have any suggestions for right at that moment? It's really overwhelming. I mean, should I have a list in front of me, like a go-to reminder system? Should I take notes? Like, do you have a suggestion for those just really overwhelming moments?
So I think in those moments, and I could totally relate to that, like there's nothing more frustrating than feeling like, you are doing everything you're supposed to be doing for the kids, mm-hmm. and someone else is not. That is super, super frustrating. And I think in those moments where you're just sort of overwhelmed with these feelings of just anger or just feeling like it's an unfair situation, one of the keys is to realize that what you're doing is you're creating a should around the situation. So you have this expectation or this standard in your mind of what people should be doing. They should have had their paperwork in order. They should have come prepared. They should have been doing these interventions for the kids. But we can't make the world conform to what our expectations are. And we know that even if really the person, that was kind of their job and they were supposed to be doing it, when we cling to those shoulds and we refuse to accept any other reality, that's what creates the stress, because reality is not aligning with our expectations of what should have happened. So it's our interpretation of it. It's our insistence on clinging to this should. They should have done it. It's supposed to be like this. This is not supposed to be happening. When we're repeating those thoughts over in our mind, that's what gets us worked up. So if we can sort of let go of those shoulds in the moment and just say, okay, this is what it is. Let me just accept and deal with what it is in the moment. That doesn't mean I'm saying it's okay. It doesn't mean I'm excusing it. It doesn't mean that there won't be consequences later on. But in this moment, I'm not going to keep repeating to myself the way this was supposed to go, because then I'm focusing all my energy on a reality that didn't come to pass. I'm focusing all my energy on something that didn't happen. So all that energy is wasted, and you're unable to deal with what's happening right in front of you. Does that make sense?
Right. Absolutely. I think that helps me think about in that moment. It's like you said, it's that reality meeting or not meeting our expectations. And instead of me, like that old Saturday Night Live skit, the lowered expectations, yes. instead of taking that route, taking the route that it can be followed up on later. What would be best for the student in that situation is probably not me playing the blame game. I think that's going to be really helpful going forward, because this is the season of the SSP, of the evaluations and everything. So that's going to help because I've got that coming up over and over in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right about follow up with it later. It's the same thing when a kid misbehaves in class. You don't have to blow up and issue the severe punishment like right then and there. Like, that's it, get out of my room. Like, you can just be like, you know what? I'm in the middle of teaching. I'm not even dealing with that right now. Like, we're going to get on track. I'm going to come deal with you later. You don't have to respond in that moment. It doesn't have to be a thing where, okay, justice has to be handed down right in this very moment. You can react calmly. You can just say, okay, this is just what it is. Let me just accept what reality is. Let me finish doing this. And then later, when I'm calmer and I've had time to think about this and process it, then we can figure out, okay, what are we going to do to make sure that this doesn't continue to happen on an ongoing basis? So we're not stuck in this situation where things aren't functioning the way they're supposed to.
Right.
Okay. So tell me about your next question.
I think that the next one that this really leads into is that this winter really seems like a season of sacrifice, and I was absolutely not prepared for that. So what can I do to transition into a more accepting mindset that I'm going to be working more, but not to be just letting everything fly? Like, I'm working so many hours right now. Well, I'm just going to let it go because it's a season of sacrifice.
Mm-hmm. So the season of sacrifice, that's a term that we've discussed in the club. And I think everyone interprets it a little bit differently. Tell me about what this looks like for you. What are you thinking about when you think about a season of sacrifice?
We're getting a lot of expectations around our standardized testing coming up. We just have a lot of kind of small things that we need to take care of on top of our RTI process heating up, our grade level planning. We also have some teacher transitions going on right now where we had someone leave and we had a long-term sub, and now we're getting a new teacher. We're doing multiple testings. We're doing a different standardized testing and our access testing for our English language learners right now. So everything is kind of in chaos, and we all are putting a happy face on, going, this is great, we can do this. But it's creating, I'm working easily 11 hours a day, and I can't get caught up. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So, sometimes with these seasons of sacrifices, we see them coming. We can say, like, if you're, for example, if you're pregnant, okay, this next year, once I have the baby, it's going to be nuts. I'm not going to be able to get that much work done. I'm not going to be at my productive level. But this is something that you didn't anticipate. It's a lot of things that are coming on you all of a sudden that are demands on your time. And you're realizing that you are going to have to funnel more energy into work than what you were expecting to do. Yeah. Yeah, life comes at us fast sometimes, right? It only takes that, that one new regulation or that at school or this one phone call with bad news, just one thing really can throw, things completely off kilter for weeks or for months, sometimes even for years.
I teach at a mostly Latino school, and so the political climate changing with the election and everything has put a lot of stress on everyone, the administration, the teachers, the students. So there's always kind of this low-lying feeling of stress with everyone feeling very unsure of what's coming. And so I think that might have also contributed to everyone just feeling a little bit stressed just because of the particular nature, of some issues. And I'm trying not to be political at all, but it's just a little bit stressful for our school population.
Right, exactly.
That was really, I think it's also a big contributor to things that are going on as well. So
yeah, I think that's absolutely a reality. Regardless of how, an individual teacher feels, there's no denying this is having a big impact on kids, particularly kids of color, particularly immigrant families. And I think, when you talk about the unexpected, for a lot of people, we didn't expect to be in this position. We didn't expect to be dealing with the things that we do. And I know a lot of kids, a lot of families, a lot of schools are really, struggling right now to have this sense of stability that they had before. And I think it does sort of create like this low-level anxiety that's constantly brewing, and people are just more on edge. And and it's difficult to focus. And I think that's a real thing. And I think it's good to acknowledge it and to be aware of that so that you can, be there to support your kids and your colleagues, because We've got a new normal now that a lot of people weren't expecting, and it's tough. It's a real stressor for a lot of people.
Right.
So when we're thinking about all of these issues together that you're dealing with, that's tremendous. That is a lot. I mean, I think what you're asking about is transitioning into a more accepting mindset, of coming to terms with the fact, okay, this is what life is like for us right now. And, I think we tend to show a lot more grace to other people than we do to ourselves. So if a friend was in your situation, and trying to tackle and deal with and manage all the things that you are, you would probably tell her, don't be too hard on yourself. Don't try to do too much. Don't expect yourself, to be doing things at this amazing level when, you've got a lot on your plate right now. But when it's us in that situation, we feel like we should continue to work, at the same pace, put out the same quality of work, no matter what's going on personally, no matter what the climate's like in the school. And really, that's not realistic. So notice your self-talk, notice that internal dialogue, how you talk to yourself, and be kind to yourself. Tell yourself, okay, this is a hard thing that we're doing here. I'm doing my best. And that has to be okay. That has to be enough. And remind yourself that it's not going to be like this forever. We tend to get into this pessimistic, sort of permanent ways of thinking. When things are bad or hard, we think, okay, I don't see a way out right now, so that must mean things are going to stay this difficult for a long time. But the truth is, life can change for better or for worse at any time. And just because we don't see the light at the end of the tunnel right now doesn't mean actually that it's not right around the corner. And difficulties don't always last just as long as we think that they will. And if we dwell on this possibility that that this could go on for years and it could just, it's not going to get better, it's just going to keep getting worse, then what that does is that drains us of hope and it drains us of optimism. And if we don't have hope that things are going to get better, then we lose the will to keep going forward and to keep trying to create change and to keep trying to look for the positive and work towards a positive. So we have to do whatever it takes to hold on to hope and to hold on to optimism, because we have to bring that into the classroom every single day. There are kids who are coming to the room who don't have that hope and that optimism. And so we have to be that for them. And that's a lot of pressure. And so if we have things happening to us, mentally, where we have convinced ourselves that things are, they're going to be unbearable, that we can't possibly do everything that needs to be done, that's going to drain us of everything that we need to give to the kids. So try to stay in that present moment as much as possible. Don't take on tomorrow. Don't worry about next week. Don't be thinking about, a month from now. Just one day at a time. What are the most important things that you need to do right now? Focus on getting those done and then take each day as it comes.
That's really good stuff. And you can edit this out if you like. I'm just very when you say holding on to hope, I'm like, oh my gosh, that just means so much to me, personally and professionally. How do I continue to hold on to hope? Because with our school, with the things going on, there's so many positive things. Absolutely, we have a new administrator, and she's doing just amazing things in the school, and I think she's just so supportive. But sometimes when I walk out of the school and I see and I hear some of the things that I see and hear, it's just so hard to be like, oh my gosh, these poor babies live in poverty and they don't have this and they have this. And I on a couple of my kids, I smelled cigarette smoke, and I teach third grade, and I knew they were smoking. And it's just to tell myself to have hope and to keep hope, that's a really big thing to me. So I appreciate you saying that. To just right now, that's really important.
It is. And I know, when you're working in a high poverty community, keeping hope is sometimes the hardest thing, because you see all the obstacles that these kids and families are up against. And I think it really, when you focus on the present and you look at those small good things that are happening every day, you realize that really you're doing everything that you can. And the fact that you are there, you are educating these kids, you are teaching them in a culturally responsive way, you're trying to meet them where they're at, that is so invaluable to kids. Just being there for the kids Just listening to them, listening to their fears. You don't even have to say very much. In many cases, teachers can't say very much, but you can listen. You can make sure that they don't feel alone or unheard. You can amplify your students' voices and allow them to make themselves heard beyond just the four walls of the classroom, too. So you're letting the kids know that they belong in your classroom. They are valuable to you and to your school community. Model resilience for them. Model how to recover from setbacks. Point out when they do the same thing, when they recover from setbacks. So they realize that they have those skills too. Show them how to create change when things aren't right. And none of this has to be a formal lesson or a big deal, something that you plan out in advance. You're reinforcing these concepts just by the way you interact with your students every day. Just by the classroom culture you create, you're showing them that they matter. And you just have no idea what an impact that's going to be on their life. And you probably won't see the results of it. And so that's why your own sense of hope is so important, because you just have to believe that what you're doing is making a difference and that these kids are going to have a great life. They have a great future. They have amazing things to offer to the world. And just stay focused on that, because it is true. It's not going to be true in every single situation, but keep giving to the kids, because you don't know which of those seeds that you plant are going to be the ones that grow. So you just keep nurturing those plants, keep watering the plants, and trust that they are going to grow. It is going to make a difference. And, the fact that they have you, someone who is there to care for them, I can't overstate the value of what that is to those kids' lives. So thank you for doing what you do for those kids every day.
I have to hold on to that. Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you.
I'm so grateful to Danielle for being here, for being so transparent and honest and sharing these struggles. I hope that as you were listening, you felt inspired, you feel ready to go in and tackle each day with hope and optimism for your kids. Remember, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be worth it. Truth for Teachers is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. For more great podcast recommendations, go to edupodcastnetwork.com. That's edupodcastnetwork.com.